The Empire thought we were weak, until one message left Earth. 3 words they'll never forget. Never cross Earth. Academia. The unforeseen impact of a human girl's arrival by 1. The anomaly arrives. Zephyrian Academy of Advanced Sciences floated in the void between 3 binary star systems, its crystalline spires catching the light of 6 distant suns. For over 2,000 galactic cycles, it had served as the galaxy's most prestigious institution of learning, where only the most intellectually gifted beings from across the star systems could earn admission. The Academy's halls buzzed with the conversations of dozens of species, each ranked according to their civilization's contributions to galactic knowledge and scientific advancement. On the highest tier walked the Zephyrians themselves, their elongated heads pulsing with bioelectric thought patterns that could process quantum mathematics as easily as breathing. Below them, the crystalline Veltar recorded every conversation in their living memory matrices. The insectoid Kethvar skittered through corridors calculating probability equations, while their compound eyes tracked 17 variables simultaneously. Even the lowest-ranked students, the reptilian saurians, possessed cognitive abilities that surpassed most other known species. Into this carefully ordered hierarchy stepped Maya Chen, a 16-year-old human from a small planet called Earth. Her arrival had been an accident of bureaucracy. A clerical error in the Galactic Exchange Program had somehow approved her application, despite humans ranking somewhere near the bottom of the intelligence scale, barely above species that had only recently discovered fire. Professor Kethvar clicked his mandibles nervously as he reviewed Maya's file in his office. His 4 arms worked independently, one set organizing data tablets while the other pair gestured in the complex patterns of Kethvar anxiety responses. The human should not be here. According to every assessment, Earth's dominant species showed promise but lacked the cognitive development for academy-level coursework. Yet the paperwork was legitimate, bearing the seals of 3 different galactic departments. Maya sat in the waiting area outside, her worn backpack contrasting sharply with the floating storage pods and bio-integrated equipment cases of other students. She watched a group of Veltar students practicing harmonic resonance, their crystal bodies chiming in perfect mathematical progressions. When one student hit a discordant note, the others immediately corrected the frequency through sympathetic vibration. A young Saurian student named Torvin approached Maya with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being among the elite. His scales shifted to a pale green, indicating mild curiosity mixed with condescension. "You must be the exchange student we heard about," he said, his translator rendering his hissing speech into standard galactic. "I am Torvin of the Saurian Mathematical Collective. I assume you will be placed in remedial courses while you adjust to our standards." Maya looked up from her observations of the Veltar students. "Actually, I was hoping to take advanced quantum mechanics and theoretical physics. Those subjects fascinate me." She spoke with simple directness, unaware of the social implications of her words. Torvin's scales shifted to orange, indicating amusement. "Theoretical physics is a 4th-year course. Most students require 2 cycles of preparatory mathematics before attempting such complexity. Perhaps you misunderstood your placement recommendations." Before Maya could respond, Professor Kethvar emerged from his office. His compound eyes fixed on her with an expression that might have been sympathy if translated across species lines. "Miss Chen, please join me. We need to discuss your academic placement." The professor's office was a marvel of organized chaos. Holographic equations floated in the air, while data streams flowed across every surface. Kethvar gestured for Maya to sit in a chair that automatically adjusted to her unfamiliar physiology. "Miss Chen, I must be direct. Your species' cognitive assessment suggests that standard academy coursework would be extremely challenging. We have prepared a modified curriculum that might be more appropriate." Maya examined the floating coursework outline. Basic mathematics for primitive species. Introduction to simple physics concepts. Elementary logic for developing minds. She frowned slightly. "Professor, I've already studied most of these concepts. On Earth, I was working on theories about quantum consciousness and the relationship between observation and reality." Kethvar's translator struggled with several of Maya's terms, creating feedback loops that made him click his mandibles. "Perhaps you could demonstrate your understanding of a simple problem." He activated a holographic display showing a basic orbital mechanics question that first-year students typically solved in minutes. Maya studied the display for a moment, then asked, "May I approach this differently?" Without waiting for permission, she stood and began moving around the hologram, viewing it from multiple angles. The traditional solution assumes the planet maintains a perfect elliptical orbit, but in reality, gravitational influences from multiple bodies create perturbations. If we consider the system as a dynamic relationship rather than fixed mathematical constants, she began describing a solution that incorporated chaos theory, multi-body interactions, and what she called intuitive approximations. Her approach was unorthodox, combining mathematical rigor with creative leaps that made Kethvar's analytical mind struggle to follow. Yet when she finished, her answer was not only correct but more accurate than the standard solution. Kethvar sat in silence for several long moments, his compound eyes processing what he had witnessed. According to every metric, humans should not be capable of such insight. Their cognitive assessments indicated linear thinking, limited processing power, and difficulty with abstract concepts. Yet this young female had just demonstrated an understanding that surpassed many of his advanced students. "Miss Chen," he said finally, "I believe we may need to reconsider your course placement." Word of the human's unusual demonstration spread quickly through the Academy's social networks. Students gathered in study halls and common areas, discussing the anomaly in hushed tones. Some dismissed it as beginner's luck or a misunderstanding. Others wondered if the human intelligence assessments might be flawed. Maya attended her first advanced quantum mechanics class the following day. Professor Zixara, a towering Zephyrian with a cranial cavity that housed one of the galaxy's most powerful biological computers, presented the day's challenge, a quantum entanglement problem that had remained unsolved for 3 academic cycles. The most brilliant students had attempted various approaches, all following established theoretical frameworks. While her classmates immediately began complex calculations, Maya sat quietly, staring at the problem display. Torvin, who had somehow managed to observe from the back of the classroom, watched with obvious anticipation of her failure. The Veltar students resonated softly as they processed probability matrices. The Kethvar pupils calculated interaction potentials with mechanical precision. After 20 minutes of silence, Maya raised her hand. "Professor, what if we're thinking about this wrong?" Her question caused several students to pause their calculations. "We keep trying to solve for the particle's behavior, but what if the entanglement isn't about the particles at all? What if it's about the observer's relationship to the system?" She walked to the display and began sketching with her finger, creating simple diagrams that looked almost childish compared to the complex mathematical expressions surrounding them. "On Earth, we have a saying, sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. What if quantum entanglement is less about particle properties and more about information sharing across dimensional boundaries?" Her approach was radically different from anything attempted before. Instead of focusing on mathematical proofs, she built her solution around conceptual relationships and pattern recognition. She described quantum states as conversations between possibilities and used analogies that made even Professor Zixara pause in concentration. When Maya finished her presentation, the classroom fell silent. Her solution was elegant, innovative, and completely unprecedented. More importantly, when Professor Zixara ran the calculations, it worked. The professor's bioelectric patterns shifted to colors that indicated profound confusion mixed with admiration. "Miss Chen, your approach defies conventional methodology yet produces viable results. How did you conceive of such a framework?" Maya shrugged, a gesture that her translator couldn't quite convey to the alien students. "I just tried to think about what felt right. Sometimes the answer isn't in the numbers. Sometimes it's in the spaces between the numbers." As students filed out of the classroom, discussions erupted in dozens of languages and communication methods. The human had not only solved an advanced problem, but had done so using methods that none of them had considered. Some students felt threatened by this challenge to their academic superiority. Others experienced something they had never felt before: curiosity about a supposedly inferior species. Professor Kethvar found Maya after classes ended, his forearms gesturing in patterns of excitement and concern. "Miss Chen, your performance today has created quite a stir among the faculty. Some of my colleagues believe your success was an accident, Others think you may represent something we have not understood about human cognition. Maya gathered her simple belongings, still unaware of the academic earthquake she had triggered. I just answered the question the way it made sense to me. Is that wrong? Not wrong, Kethvar replied, his translator struggling to convey the complex emotions in his voice. Unprecedented. Your species was assessed based on your technological development and formal educational structures. Perhaps we failed to account for other forms of intelligence. As Maya walked through the academy's corridors, she noticed students watching her with new attention. Some stared with open fascination, others with suspicious calculation. The rigid hierarchy that had governed the academy for millennia suddenly seemed less certain, shaken by the arrival of one small human who thought about problems differently than anyone else. That evening, as she sat in her dormitory room reviewing notes from her advanced classes, Maya had no idea that academic committees across the galaxy were emergency meetings to discuss the implications of her presence. She simply prepared for tomorrow's lessons, eager to learn from beings who had mastered sciences that Earth was only beginning to discover them. Galaxy's most prestigious institution of learning was about to discover that intelligence came in forms they had never imagined. The transformation begins 3 weeks after Maya's arrival. The Zephyrian Academy faced its first cross-species study group in over a century. The formation had been organic, emerging from curiosity rather than official policy. It started when Zara, a young Veltar student, approached Maya after a particularly challenging theoretical physics lecture. Zara's crystalline body resonated with harmonics of uncertainty as she spoke. Maya Chen, your solution to today's dimensional fold problem was unlike anything in our memory banks. Would you be willing to explain your reasoning process? Her request was simple, but it represented a seismic shift in Academy social dynamics. Veltar students, with their perfect memory matrices and logical processing, rarely sought help from anyone ranked below them in the hierarchy. Maya looked up from her notes, surprised by the request. Of course. I'd love to discuss it. Sometimes I'm not sure if my answers make sense to others. She gestured to an empty space in the common area. Want to sit and talk through it? As they settled into conversation, other students began to drift closer. First came Jorik, a young Kethvar whose compound eyes tracked their discussion with fascination. Then next, a Saurian student whose scales shifted through multiple colors indicating complex emotional states. Even Torvin, who had initially dismissed Maya's capabilities, found himself drawn to their growing circle. Maya pulled out a simple piece of paper and began sketching. Her use of primitive writing materials had initially amused her classmates, but they were beginning to recognize that her simple diagrams often contained insights their complex holographic models missed. The dimensional fold problem assumes that space bends in predictable ways, she said, drawing curved lines. But what if space doesn't just bend? What if it learns? Jorik's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of intense thought. Learning implies consciousness. Spatial dimensions cannot possess awareness. His statement reflected the accepted scientific paradigm that had governed galactic understanding for millennia. Why not? Maya asked simply. On Earth, we're discovering that consciousness might be more fundamental than we thought. What if the universe itself has a kind of awareness? What if when we observe dimensional folds, we're actually participating in a conversation with space-time? Zara's crystalline structure began resonating at frequencies that indicated deep contemplation. Your hypothesis suggests that scientific observation is not passive measurement, but active participation. This would revolutionize our understanding of experimental methodology. As their discussion continued, something remarkable began to happen. The students stopped competing and started collaborating. Jorik's mathematical precision combined with Maya's intuitive leaps. Zara's perfect memory provided historical context, while Nex's analytical abilities identified logical frameworks. Even Torvin, despite his initial prejudice, found himself contributing insights that built upon Maya's unconventional approaches. Professor Kethvar observed their gathering from across the common area, his forearms working nervously at his data tablets. The academic hierarchy was dissolving before his eyes. Students who had never spoken to each other were now working together on problems that had challenged faculty members. The human's presence was creating unprecedented changes in the academy's social and intellectual structure. The transformation accelerated when Maya proposed something that shocked the entire institution, a joint research project. What if we combined all our different ways of thinking? She suggested during one of their informal study sessions. Jorek's mathematical abilities, Zara's memory banks, Nex's analysis, Torvin's theoretical frameworks, and my whatever it is I do. Maybe together we could solve something really important. Zara's resonance patterns shifted to excitement. There is a problem that has challenged our greatest minds for centuries. The void echo phenomenon in the outer spiral regions. Ships report hearing sounds in empty space where sound should not exist. Every expedition returns with different data, and no theory adequately explains the observations. The project began as academic curiosity, but quickly evolved into something more significant. Maya's approach to the void echo problem was characteristically unconventional. While previous researchers had focused on measuring and categorizing the phenomenon, she asked different questions. What if the echoes aren't random? What if they're trying to communicate? Her suggestion prompted weeks of collaborative research. Jorek calculated probability matrices for potential communication patterns. Zara accessed historical records of every reported encounter. Nex analyzed the psychological profiles of affected crews. Torvin developed theoretical frameworks for transdimensional consciousness. Maya contributed what she called pattern intuition, the ability to recognize meaningful relationships in apparently chaotic data. Their breakthrough came when Maya suggested they stop trying to decode the echoes and instead try to answer them. If someone's trying to talk to us, she reasoned, maybe we should talk back. The concept was so simple that no one had considered it. Previous expeditions had all focused on observation and measurement. None had attempted direct interaction. The Academy's administration initially resisted their proposal for an experimental mission. The idea of students conducting original research in dangerous space was unprecedented. More troubling was the fact that their theoretical framework challenged fundamental assumptions about consciousness, communication, and the nature of reality itself. However, the students' research had attracted attention throughout the galaxy. Other institutions began requesting copies of their preliminary findings. Trade consortiums expressed interest in practical applications. Even the Galactic Council noted that the cross-species collaboration represented a new model for interstellar cooperation. When the Academy finally approved their expedition, it marked the first time in its history that students from multiple species had been granted permission for independent research. The mission launched 6 months after Maya's arrival, crewed by a team that would have been unthinkable under the previous hierarchy. Their ship, the Academic Unity, entered the Void Echo region after 3 days of travel. As expected, they began detecting the mysterious sounds, haunting harmonics that seemed to echo from empty space itself. But instead of simply recording the phenomena, they followed Maya's protocol for active communication. Zara generated resonance patterns designed to match the echo frequencies. Jorek calculated optimal transmission intervals. Nex monitored for response patterns while Torvin documented theoretical implications. Maya listened, using her intuitive abilities to sense meaningful patterns in the cosmic conversation. The response came on their 4th day in the region. The random echoes suddenly organized into complex harmonics that unmistakably indicated intelligence. Something in the void was indeed trying to communicate, and it was responding to their attempts at dialogue. Contact with the void entities, as they came to be known, revolutionized galactic understanding of consciousness and communication. The beings existed in dimensional spaces between normal spacetime, observing but unable to directly interact with physical reality. They had been trying to make contact for millennia, but no one had thought to simply answer their calls. Maya's approach led to the establishment of the first transdimensional communication protocols. Her insistence on treating the unknown as potentially conscious rather than merely phenomena opened entirely new fields of scientific inquiry. The academic hierarchy that had seemed so rigid and natural began to dissolve as institutions across the galaxy recognized that intelligence manifested in forms they had never imagined. When the academic unity returned to the Academy, Maya found that everything had changed. The rigid species-based rankings had been replaced by collaborative research groups. Students were encouraged to challenge established theories and explore unconventional approaches. The Academy that had once prized conformity to established knowledge now celebrated innovative thinking and cross-species cooperation. Professor Kethavar summoned Maya to his office one final time before her scheduled return to Earth. His compound eyes reflected something that might have been pride, mixed with wonder. Miss Chen, when you arrived, our institution measured intelligence by computational power and adherence to established methodologies. You have taught us that true intelligence might be the courage to question what we think we know. Maya packed her simple belongings, preparing to return to a Earth that would find her stories of galactic academia almost impossible to believe. But her impact would continue long after her departure. The Academy had established the Maya Chen protocol for evaluating intelligence, which recognized pattern recognition, creative problem-solving, and collaborative ability as equally important to computational power. Students across the galaxy began requesting transfers to institutions that embraced the human approach to learning. Species that had been dismissed as intellectually inferior were reassessed and welcomed into academic communities. The rigid hierarchy that had governed galactic education for millennia gave way to a more inclusive understanding of intelligence and learning. As Maya's transport ship departed the Academy, she watched the crystalline spires fade into the distance. She had arrived as an anomaly, a clerical error that shouldn't have been admitted. She was leaving as the catalyst for a transformation that would reshape how an entire galaxy understood consciousness, intelligence, and the infinite ways that minds could perceive reality. The girl from the small blue planet had proven that sometimes the most profound discoveries came not from superior processing power or vast databases, but from the simple willingness to see the universe through different eyes. In doing so, she had given the galaxy something it never knew it was missing: the recognition that intelligence was not a hierarchy to be climbed, but a spectrum to be celebrated.